not have Big Daddy government come in and tell us how to do every single thing. I do believe in safety, and the Department of Agriculture is intended, the intent was to make sure that foods that produce and brought to the public are safe for consumption. But we've gone overboard. Number one is we pass legislation where legislators don't know what's in the bill. They don't read the bills. They usually will go by whomever sponsors the bill and say, why should I vote for this? And they tell them, because I'm asking you to. And if you vote for this bill, I'll vote for your bill. No one's read the bill. And usually the bills are in summary form, and then it goes to the department in which is going to enforce it, and they're given the responsibility to write the rules. Now, if I'm a bureaucrat and I'm said, you write the rules for this law, I think I'd make it so it's easy on me.
Right.
And harder on everybody else. And that's happening at the local level, it's happening at the state level, and it's happening at the federal level. And that's not what our founders intended.
Paul, how do you feel about property rights, and what would you do to help defend property rights?
Well, I think we have to reduce regulations of property rights. I am death against any taking of any property. We face that at the local level, you know, for the good of the public or for the good of the masses. I'm not a buyer into that. Personal property and private property is exactly what it is. You buy a piece of land, you own it, it's yours. I think that property rights are very, very important. That's the foundation of how we built our country.
Exactly. I believe strongly that an individual should have the freedom to decide what does or does not go into their own body. Do you believe a governor has any right to mandate vaccinations over
Absolutely
a
not.
flu pandemic?
Absolutely not. I don't think the government should have any role in medicine. Quite frankly, vaccinations should be between a family and its doctor, and it should not have to do with schools. Now, if there are serious threats, I think we have to educate. But quite frankly, I don't think this H1N1, if somebody told me I had to take the vaccination, I would absolutely refuse. My daughter, who's in college studying medicine, is saying, I wouldn't put it in my body. Now, if somebody tells me I have to, I think we're going to go to court.
Right on. I haven't been sick in 12 years. I eat garlic if I'm coming down with something. I eat an apple a day, just as the saying goes. It's a superfood. Do you support natural medicines as a governor?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, you say garlic. I take garlic pills. I take vinegar apple pills. I take all kinds of supplements that work. Frankly, they work. And they work better than a lot of medication that will have serious side effects. So, yes, very much so. I think we're entitled to do what we believe is best for our bodies.
And those things you mentioned also have another common element. They don't cost very much.
That is correct. Not like prescription drugs.
Correct.
Which, incidentally, wouldn't cost nearly as much if the government wasn't involved.
You're right.
The reason our drugs are costing so much is we overregulate every industry.
And like you said, they're making those regulations to please the people
We're
that are
enforcing
paying
it.
them off.
This is the insanity about where we've gotten, is the people that are enforcing the laws are writing the rules to satisfy their desire to make their jobs easier. We have an ongoing battle in Waterville about snow removal. We have an area of town where there's several restaurants and nightclubs or grills and taverns and bars. And if they're going to pick up the snow, they supposedly will give you a day's notice. But if you leave your car, if it's snowing out, it starts to snow out, and it's, by the time you're leaving, it's snowing very hard, you've had a couple of drinks, or you decide to take a cab, they'll tow your car away. Now, what they're saying to the people is, we'd rather see you drive drunk than to leave your car there, which is insanity.
Pretty horrible message.
Yeah, it's a horrible message. I keep telling them, plan, a little bit of planning will take care of all this issue. Allow a certain part of the parking lot for overnight parking, and the next night, once you clean the snow out and the rest of the parking lot, go back, put the sign there, and clean that part. But that's one thing that my councils have done, see eye to eye with me. They'd rather see people drive after they've been drinking in snowstorms to get their car in the parking lot. So sometimes I wonder, who is the stakeholder? Is it the employee or is it the taxpayer?
And that's a great question. I think as the old saying, follow the money, you might find your answer.
That's correct. And in my mind, and truly, and that's where most people criticize me as being a little bit tough, is I don't care if it's easy or hard. I look to who's paying the bill, and that's the boss. He's the stakeholder, and so we have to work for them. We used to have, if you worked for a state or a federal government or even a local community, it used to be public service. You were a public servant. You served the public. Nowadays, the public servants are writing the rules for themselves, and the people paying the bill are left in the cold.
Right. And that's the unfortunate situation, so glad to hear you think along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
I read that you're a member of the NRA, the National Rifle Association,
Yes.
and I thank you for that, really do. And it'd be safe to say that you would not support the idea that a town or state or a city could ban gun ownership from law-abiding citizens.
Absolutely. It's a right that was written in the Constitution of the United States. We have the right to bear arms. And unless that Constitution is amended, and it takes many states to agree to it, and the majority of the American people to agree to it, I do not believe that any community or state has the right to ban guns. In fact, I go one step further and say that the federal government has no right to pass legislation that contradicts the Second Amendment.
Right. In fact, the Maine Constitution is even more pointed on this issue, says that
Correct.
the citizens have the right to bear arms, and this right shall never be questioned.
Absolutely.
I like that disclaimer.
And I've read the Federalist Papers, and I would tell judges that the Supreme Court judges, that if you can't find it in the Constitution, and you can't interpret or you don't understand the Constitution, read the Federalist Papers. The intent is right there, and it's very clear. And most everything that goes on in our nation can be sought out in the Constitution and the Federalist Papers.
Great. If I'm there, somebody could be in court arguing over an issue, and they might believe that, the law was unconstitutional. They might want to argue to the supremacy clause. The lower court shouldn't be making and enforcing rules that contradict the Constitution. That's the supreme law of the land. But as it stands right now, most courts won't let you make an argument to the Constitution. They won't hear that. As governor, if someone in the legislature proposed a bill that would allow people in court to argue to the Constitution, is that the sort of bill you would support?
Absolutely. I am a very strong supporter of our Constitution. In fact, not only do I support our Constitution, but I've studied every single president to see how they stand and what their ideology was in reference to how they govern our land. And some, I believe, were very, very strict constitutionalists. Others, I believe, have attempted to rewrite it on many occasions. I think it's important that we settle grievances at the lowest possible level. And if we can do that by arguing constitutional issues at the Superior Court, I have no problem. In fact, I think that saves people money, saves people time, it gets the issue resolved.